So I hope everyone had wonderful mentoring conversations. And right now I'm really delighted to introduce you to our next panelist, who is a great friend to Phi Beta Kappa. And we'll talk with you about how you can reflect on the art and science of connecting with employers. Time and time again, we hear from students that you really aren't sure about how to pitch your liberal arts and sciences background. And we wanted to make sure that you leave this conference experience confident in the value of education. George Anders, senior editor at large at LinkedIn, where he covers the future of work and writes the monthly College to Careers newsletter. He is deeply engaged in developing next generation digital media tools that can make it easier for job seekers to become career ready. He champions ways that technology and the human touch can work in harmony. George is also the author of 5 business books, including his latest, You Can Do Anything, The Surprising Power of a Useless Liberal Arts Education. He started his career as a journalist at the Wall Street Journal, where he shared in the Pulitzer Prize for National Reporting. Over the years, he has also been part of a writing team at Fast Company Magazine, Forbes, and Review. His 2000 book about Hewlett-Packard, Perfect Enough, was a New York Times bestseller. George majored in economics at Stanford University, graduated with Phi Beta Kappa honors. We're delighted that he is here to share his expertise with you today. Thank you so much, George.
So thank you, Anne, and thank you everyone for coming to join. I'm going to focus today about networking, which is something that's both positive and controversial. So we're going to try and get into all of those aspects. I'm not able to see the chat on this screen, but Nora can. And I'll ask you first, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is, honestly, I'd rather go to the dentist, and 5 is, this is what I do best. How would you rate networking in your world right now? And if you're able to just enter a number in the chat, and then if you want to add a couple of words of commentary, that's okay too, or just the numbering. I want to get a sense of where everyone is.
I'm seeing a lot of 3s, 3.5, mostly 3s.
Okay, so 3 is a good place to be. Hopefully by the time we're done, you'll feel that you're on your way to a 4, and 5 is within sight to some degree. But I'm also going to address all the things that are frustrating about networking and that make it something that even people who are high achievers in many other fields feel, what is this all about? And what are the rules and how do I get my head around it? So Nora, we can get started on the slides. Okay, so do we have the first slide up? This is interesting. I've got a giant screen that shows all of your faces in beautiful detail. I'm not able to see what's actually being presented, but that's okay. I can fly without.
Yes, we're on the next slide.
Okay, so let's go to the slide that shows the bright lights.
Yes.
Okay, and this I think is the stereotype of networking, or the stress point, that somehow it's very detached, it's very cold, it's kind of manipulative, and the totality of ourselves as persons is reduced to little dots on someone else's grid, or a collection of business cards that someone is constantly snapping up, and it's almost like being at a timeshare convention that you just go, do you even care about me as a person, or am I just a cell on your spreadsheet? So that's not where we want to be. And what I'm going to try and do in this talk is lay out ways that networking can be a friendlier experience and a more energizing experience, and one where you feel you can really bring your full self to the process. So let's jump to the next slide.
Yep.
Okay, and I want to share the story of Jasmine Aber. This came into my life literally 2 or 3 days ago, and I'm right in the middle of trying to get this to a good place. So 1, it's very immediate, and 2, it actually encapsulates a lot of the things that I'd like to talk about. So Jasmine, as her bio and photo shows here, is a German architect and someone with a deep interest in urban affairs and the future of cities. I've never met her, but my friend Mike Ritter has. Mike is an engineer at Google, and she had come in to talk to the Google people about their smart cities ideas, because they have big, ambitious ideas. And her ask to him was, I'm doing this visiting position at Berkeley now. I'm writing a chapter in a book. I've written it to the best of my English writing skills, but English is my second language. I can communicate just fine speaking English, but there's a cadence to American academic writing that's probably not quite the same as German academic writing. I could use some help getting it in good shape. Mike's an engineer, he lives in the world of code. He's not the right person to help her on getting that narrative right, but Mike and I went to school together and he invited me to Google one time to do an author talk. So I owe Mike a favor. I probably owe Mike 3 or 4 favors. So when he reached out to me and said, can you help Jasmine with this? The only answer was sure. So let's jump to the next slide. So now we're going to look at a chain because I'm, without being snooty about it, I'm way too busy to do this. Plus, I don't know a great deal about urban policy issues, so I wouldn't even be a very good editor. And I was stumped for about a day because I thought, I know people who are fairly high up in book editing, but they're expensive and they've got priorities and they might want to meddle too much. They might want to reshape it to something else. And then I know people who are very entry level in journalism, but I'm not sure they have the authority or the gravitas to help her get it to where it needs to be. And then I realized, wait a sec, I do know someone who would be just right for this. And the person I know who's the last circle on this is Josh Stevens. He's based in LA. I think he's either Amherst or Yale liberal arts graduate. If he's not Phi Beta Kappa, he's close. So one of our tribe. And Josh's day job is to help affluent Los Angeles people get their kids' college essays in shape. And it pays well enough that he can spend time doing what he really wants to do, which is to be an urban affairs journalist. And he periodically writes these very in-depth 3,000, 4,000 word pieces about how Los Angeles is either developing sensibly or not developing sensibly. He likes that side of his identity. It's not economically very worthwhile for him, but it's a great deal of satisfaction. So one, he's got the skills and the background and the level of expertise to be just right for Jasmine. But better than that, it's a win for him too. And what we end up doing, and we can go to the next slide, is to take Jasmine's rather rare and challenging request and connect it with someone who's got rare skills as well. And we go through Mike and me to get there. And I've switched our labels on this slide. We're no longer what we are professionally, we're connectors. And that's a concept I want to spend a little time on because I think that's the key to getting your networking to work well and for it to be fun and energizing and something that you feel is something that you can do with pride and delight as opposed to feeling like, oh my God, this is a chore. This is, the proverbial go to the dentist thing. So when I say connectors, I had never seen myself going into this role. I was not an especially outgoing person in my teens and 20s. I was kind of locked in on where I was trying to get to and, shy and awkward at parties. My wife found that taking me to parties was a bit of a nightmare because I wanted to leave after 20 minutes. So anyway, I take that background, but one of the things that LinkedIn is a beautiful channel for networking for introverts. We can sit at the keyboard, we can connect with people when we write, we can send people notes, and that sort of opened up, along with other social media channels, a way that I could make the most of contacts. I actually like meeting people in small settings, I just don't like meeting them in parties. So I end up having met a lot of people in a lot of places and have that ability to connect. And Mike is the same thing in tech. So we managed to solve Jasmine's problem and create an opportunity for Josh at the same time. And I would nominate this as networking gone right. This is not one person trying to exploit someone else to take advantage of them. This is not an effort to sell a product that's hard to sell and just pushing it at people or sort of tugging too hard on people to get employed. This is like-minded people finding each other and being able to do good things. So if that's our model, how do I open up this model so that as many of you as possible can find ways to make it work? And I'm going to go through 4 slides now that will take you through some of the key questions. So we'll go to the next one. So the first thing is, who would you want to network with? And do you have a pool of people that you can find networks with? And here's where I'd like to get interactive. I'm going to put a couple ideas on the table, but if you can join in the chat and either bear witness on some of these that, yes, I've made this work, or there's a community that you're wondering how you could approach, we can then turn it into discussion time and go deeper on any of these issues that interest you. So the 6 that I've tagged, the first is alumni from your college. And this is a great pool of people. I mean, the fact that you went to the same school or you are at the same school as someone who attended 5 years ago or 20 years ago, great source of common bonds. I will get notes from people, and if they're at a school I was associated with, it's hard to say no. So that's a big pool. People from your hometown, and this is especially powerful if you came from a small town or you came from a town outside a big US metro area. People look out for each other, and there's a sense of kinship. We have 2 colleagues that work here that are both from the Caribbean, and they're actually, I think one is from Montserrat and the other is from the Cayman, and that's like 1,000 miles apart. But there's still a sense of there's a Caribbean identity that clicks for both of them. And they found it just nice to be able to be in communication. So again, the tools we've got of LinkedIn, you can look up people's hometown. You can do filters where you look up hometown and professional interests, and you can start to find that person who is working for the State Department that also grew up in Matador, Texas. And if you're from Matador, Texas, you're going to have a moment, or at least the odds are much better. Next group is anyone connected to your professional or professional networks, professional organizations, school clubs. We've known this about athletes for years. I mean, if you're on an Ivy League crew team, there is a pathway that leads straight to law firms and investment banks, and we can argue about whether that's as it should be or not. But the principle that get involved in an activity and reconnect with other people who are in that activity is a strong one. Phi Beta Kappa is a very excellent organization for this, and the fact that we're all in the same virtual room together speaks to the fact that there's a unifying element here. Fourth area, people who've been come from places that are important to you too. I had outreach one time from someone who was a finance major at one of the Kansas universities. He had like a 3.4, 3.5. He was wanting to connect on Wall Street, and he was feeling, I'm an outsider. I don't know how to get their attention. And they go, your grades won't automatically do it for you. Coming from Kansas won't instantly do it for you, although you deserve consideration. But he had worked for a hotel in the Maldives. And I go, look up everyone who's got Maldives experience, and you will find that they will be much more willing to connect with you. And then it's up to you to take that to somewhere useful. But that's a commonality that, again, will strike up rapport. Next one, whatever you publish. My boss, Dan Roth, the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn, says publishing is the new resume. And if you've got opinions on current issues, write a piece about what China's human rights policy should be or what leverage the US has on it. You can publish on Medium. It's a great publishing platform. I like LinkedIn too, but as you get away from core business issues and more towards social issues, there are other platforms that work well. If you think people will pay for your stuff, put it up on Patreon. This is a good time to be an independent publisher. And there's no reason at this stage in life that your ideas should be marginalized. This is a good time to be hearing from you. And then you've got ways to distribute that. People will see your writing and they'll connect with you. So that's powerful. And then the last is anything else you're doing on social media. I'm not sure I know how to turn TikTok into a career opener, but someone probably has figured that out. So those are my 6 ideas. If you're not in the chat already, share some thoughts about either ways you've made this work or ways that you're right on the brink of trying to figure out how could I make this work? And then we'll have a discussion about some of those. And I'm counting on Nora to identify the interesting ones and bring them into the conversation, and then we'll get rolling.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just giving people a minute here, but. Great. So we have a couple coming in now. And we can also have, I can have you unmute each student and just kind of say what you said. So Isabel, do you want to start?
I'll start. Hi, George. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. I really liked your point about connecting with people who see what you publish and create. I've heard that before, and I like writing, and I've thought about writing pieces on Medium as well. But my problem is that I feel a lot of imposter syndrome because of my age and where I'm at in life, I don't think people would be interested. So right now I'm trying to get past that barrier and get to the point where I feel comfortable sharing my opinions.
So let me give you a prompt that is very easy to respond to and where imposter syndrome should fade away. Something that you are an expert on is your own learning journey. And that's actually hugely relevant to people who've been in the field for a long time of what am I reading? What am I studying? What is my path toward knowledge? I think in almost any field, there's this concern if you've been in it for more than 10 or 15 years that, you know what, I might be working off old knowledge. I might be working off of old sets of principles and dynamics. And if there are new voices that are shaping an issue, it's on me to understand them. So you don't necessarily have to present that you've got all the answers, but tell me a little more about what area of public service you're most interested in, and then we'll see if we can model up some ways you could do this.
So I'm really interested in finding a link between arts and literature and human rights. So I love everything that has to do with community building and trying to find innovative ways to create social programs that help strengthen either democratization or overall equity and access for people. So, and I have a bunch of ideas about things and perspectives, but I haven't had any real experience working with that. So I kind of feel that I'd be speaking just out of blank thoughts.
So start with something that you're very grounded on. If there's a book you read where you go, this is a great book, more people should be reading this. This should be taught. This should be done as dramatic readings. Become the champion of that book. Or if there's a play where you know it as the formal written version of the play, but you've never seen it staged, wouldn't it be great if some city staged this play? Here is my idea for what people could do. And people will engage on the promise of the idea. You don't have to figure out how you're going to get it funded and how far apart the chairs will be and whether you'll have actors' equity or not. You can just get the conversation started. And if you're passionate about any work of art or literature, just be its champion. And I can tell you firsthand as an author, I'm so grateful anytime someone sees value in what I've done and wants to project it forward. The author of whatever works you're having, if they become aware of your publishing and you can send them a note saying, hey, I really liked your work. I just wrote a piece about it. It's up on Medium. Let me know what you think. You've got a new friend. Does that start to open a way for you to do it? And what would be a couple of the works of art that you're interested in or literature?
So I just finished reading this book called Development as Freedom by an Indian economist, and it replaces the way that we think about economic development a lot. And that's raised a lot of interesting questions. And I've actually been thinking about how I can talk about that to professors and incorporate those views into community work I've been doing. But like you said, I think the idea of maybe writing a post on LinkedIn, sharing my thoughts and telling people to read it, and then we can share mutual thoughts and see where that goes.
Absolutely. And one of the things I'm happy to do, send me a link when it goes live. I'm happy to upvote it, put in a nice comment, tag a few people who I think should be reading it. Believe it or not, they actually pay me to do that. So I'm literally doing my job when I do that. And I would love to see it. Send me a connection request if you want. I'm happy to connect with as many of you as want. But in particular, think of me as a way to amplify what you're sharing with the world. And I'll look for ways to do that.
Thank you so much, George.
Sure. No, that's great. I love the fact that you've identified a work. It's not one that I know, but a lot of people are ready to learn it. And this is how new books and new ideas come into the world. Nora, do we have a couple others?
Oh yeah, we have a lot in the chat right now. So in response to your kind of question for additional ideas, I'll just recap. So Mike said some schools have undergrad political reviews, student newspapers, etc. Kind of a networking point. Sarah said that she got an internship with a congressman after connecting with staff of the office.
And Nora, if I could just ask, your mic's a little faint and you're talking a little fast. If you can give me a little more volume and pace it out, then I'll be able to track everything.
Of course, yeah. Sorry about that. Is this
no trouble?
Okay. So I was just recapping, and then we have some questions as well. So Mike has suggested that some schools have undergraduate political reviews, student newspapers, etc. And then Sarah has suggested that she got an internship with a congressman after connecting with staff that were also USF alumni.
Great. No, that's a wonderful point about undergraduate reviews. And yes, that's the one. It's pretty much a guaranteed path to publication. You'll get a little bit of editing from peers, and then you've got a link that you can send out. And yeah, that's where ideas start.
Right. Yeah. And then Razia, did you want to share your comment? Because I think that a few other people in the chat also kind of related to that.
Sure. I said I find it hard to retain those relationships that I have when I first meet people, or even at conferences like this. That's what I'm thinking about, and not being overwhelmed with following up on maybe 20 or so people after the conference. So I just wanted some advice on that.
Yes, I think there's this tendency to try and go for big numbers. I would say the top 10% of your contacts are going to deliver 80 or 90% of the value. So instead of feeling like you got to follow on everyone, think about who did you enjoy the most? Who would you actually genuinely like to talk to? And sometimes you don't have to do a lot. If you haven't talked to them for someone in a couple months, just send them and say, hey, how's it going? Or if there's something in the news, wonder what you're thinking about this. And those light touch reconnections tend to keep the relationship live. I will often send people notes when they announce new jobs of, hey, that sounds really cool. And people appreciate that. So that's another way that's sort of effortless to keep up. In our site, for better or worse, will give you notifications if someone's just joined a new place or published something or got a promotion. And that's a good way. I usually try and bring a personal dimension to it. I mean, they're autocomplete responses, and I try and be a little better than autocomplete. So if it's someone who's got promoted, I'll go, wow, hard to believe that just 3 years ago we were walking through Chicago in the snow wondering what to do. And hopefully we actually did walk through Chicago in the snow, and it's not my hallucination, but just something that will remind them of how they know me. Yeah, and you're right that sometimes the enthusiasm of that first meeting fades away and people get busy or what have you. But you don't need to carry 80 or 90% of those relationships. If you've got 10 or 20 that take you to a good place, just follow up on those.
Thank you.
Sure. Nora, any others?
Yes. Yes. I thought we would go to Gabby next.
Yeah, George, first of all, thank you so much for speaking with us today. And it's kind of funny because the comment I put in the chat is kind of struggling with like reaching out to alumni, and I am a current Stanford student, so I just thought it was a little bit funny to be bringing it up to you. But just like this idea of like not really wanting to like bother people and realizing that these people have full-time jobs and lives and things like that, and so knowing when to not get discouraged when you are reaching out to alumni.
So first of all, reconnecting with people who are earlier in their careers is kind of energizing for us. And I'll put up a slide in a little bit that shows all the reasons why people would want to talk to you. And you know what? We could jump ahead to that. So Nora, why don't we jump 2 slides to why would these busy people spend time with me?
Yep, we're here.
Okay, so the first one is quite genuine. They see you as a younger version of themselves. And, that can cross gender, race, hometown, whatever, but there's a spark where, people like to be mentors. They like to give back. They like to influence the next generation. And there's some people who are extremely good at playing the protege role. I worked with one guy early in my career who ultimately ended up being CEO of Hearst. And he went from being a newspaper reporter to a big corporate guy. And Steve's greatest skill was getting along with people who were older and more powerful than him. And somehow he had the knack. And even if the rest of us don't, I think there's a natural role, and that's legitimate. The next area is people who appreciate how you engage with their work. And I would say, especially for people who are fairly prominent, they get enough fan mail. There's some that are insecure and just always want to get fan mail. But what they really appreciate is discernment. You read something interesting in their work and you want to engage on the idea. I had my most interesting conversation on one book with someone who just hated it. But she hated it for a lot of interesting reasons, and it wasn't selling as well as I thought. And you know what? Let me reach out to Christine, swallow my pride, and go, you know what? You're seeing something in my book that I hadn't realized was there. You're seeing some problems. Tell me more. And we actually ended up having what went from a confrontation to a friendship, and she helped me get my next one in better shape. But I think the kind of people you'll find most interesting aren't the ones who just constantly need to be told they're great. But if there's a particular passage you read and you go, I'm wondering how you would reinterpret this in light of something else, that's a great way to get people going and challenge them a little. Don't be afraid to bring your ideas and your mind, and they will get more satisfaction out of debating an issue with you. Are there any particular people that you would have liked to reach out to and you just go, oh my goodness, they're on too high a pedestal, I don't know how to connect with them? Because I had to do that my entire profession in my 20s. And yes, it can be scary at times, but I've got some hacks on that, and I'd love to just work through an example with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a former Stanford student who now goes to Yale Law School, and it took me like weeks to grow up the courage to connect with her on LinkedIn, but like now I'm just like, what do I say in like messages and stuff like that. But like she does like human rights work, which is stuff that I want to do. So yeah.
So are you interested in law, and
Yeah.
would you like some insight? Okay. So do you know what area of law you'd want to specialize in, or even how to start to choose a specialty?
I mean, I do know like basically what I want to do in terms of human rights work and advocacy generally, but I'm specifically interested in a lot of things like immigration, international criminal law, and other things. So definitely law school would be the time for me to hone in on that, as opposed to coming into my junior year of college. But definitely we share a lot of similar interests.
Yeah, okay, so a couple of questions that come to mind is, if you go to an elite law school like Yale, are you able to really concentrate on things like immigration? Because so much of what Yale does is train Top Gun corporate lawyers and people who are going to end up on the Supreme Court. And those are cool pathways, but immigration is a different pathway. And if you could get some advice from her of, are there any particular profs who are good? Are there enough electives that you can start to build that focus? Or does a place like Yale or Stanford or Harvard keep pulling you back to, we want you to work at Cravath, we want you to learn how to do bond prospectuses, we want you to learn how to do an M&A. And she'll probably welcome the chance to have that conversation with someone who's on the outside, because she's probably feeling a little bit of that pressure herself, and being reminded that there are people on the outside who still hold to that sense of lawyers should be doing something for public service. That'll be kind of refreshing for her. There's a chance that, you know, the evening before she's got to take her contracts exam, she'll write you a half-hour email and go, you know, I am so torn with having to learn this contract stuff. Thank you for coming into my life and giving me a chance to talk about what else lawyers can do. Now I got to get back to my contracts, but it was great having that conversation with you. And seriously, don't underestimate how much your questions and your interests can brighten people's day and kind of remind them why they went into the field in the first place.
Yeah, sorry, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah, and keep me posted. Send me a connection. I'll try and think of some Stanford people I know who are connected with immigration law and human rights, and I'd be happy to make introductions if I can.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
We've got at least 4 or 5 more. So
awesome. Yeah, this is the main reason I'm doing this. I mean, I'll do slides as necessary, but this kind of conversation is, to me, the high point.
Perfect. All right. So Melina, do you want to go next?
Sure. Kind of in a similar vein to what's already been discussed about retaining connections once you've already made them. I think one thing I've found is that I'm comfortable enough to form a connection, but I'm kind of wondering like how you're supposed to maintain that outside of, I just want to make sure that, you know, I'm not only contacting connections when I need something from them, right? Like, how is it that you said like little light touch things every once in a while is great. But
so give me an example of someone who's in that middle zone where you've established contact, but you're wondering, what's my next step and how do I build on this as opposed to having it fall apart? What would be a good, clear example?
Sure. So I guess one example would be often with professors. So I have one professor that I took a great course with, and we stayed in touch, and then he ended up writing a recommendation letter for me for something. But outside of that, we haven't connected very much. And I just want to make sure that I'm not only ever going back to him when I need another recommendation letter.
So on pretty much any prof, it's worth keeping track of what they're publishing. And you can sometimes see it on their bio. You can see it in Google Scholar. You can, if they're speaking at conferences, that may be up on YouTube. So I'd say anytime you're thinking about reaching out to them, do 15 minutes of Google Scholar and social media search just to see if they're in the mix. A fair number of tweet, if they tweeted on anything interesting, that gives you an entry point. But being able to talk about their current latest research interest, that gets you to a good place. What field does this professor specialize in?
He is actually a lobbyist, but he's done like a lot of stuff on Capitol Hill and that sort of thing.
So have you gotten the prof's thoughts on the change in administration and whether lobbying is easier or harder?
No, I have not.
People are bound to have opinions on that. It'd be kind of interesting in its own right, and that's also a way to get a conversation. I would think that figuring out how to get Team Biden around to your point of view is miles away from trying to get Team Trump there, and he may just have funny stories that he'll want to share.
Okay, so it's worth just kind of engaging a conversation about just about anything every once in a while to maintain the connection. It doesn't have to be anything more than that, I guess. Maybe it's easier than I think I was making it out to be in my head.
Yeah, in fact, if we still have the slide up, I want to highlight point 5, which is you're entertaining. And don't be afraid to bring some of your personality and maybe even a lot of your personality. And a lot of the people you're dealing with are in positions of power where everyone has to behave very much according to the script. The chance just to have a laugh about something, share a funny story. I mean, a lot of times they've got DC gossip and you're an interesting person to share it with. They may leave out the name, so if you wouldn't believe what I heard from, this lobbyist yesterday, or, what one senator said to me. Washington's a gossipy place, and give them a chance to know that it's appreciated and that you're not going to publish it tomorrow, but it's just a nice place to have a conversation.
Great, thank you.
Cool.
Okay. All right, we have Sam next.
All right. Hey, George, thanks for coming to chat with us today. I actually just closed out of the chat and I was going to look back at it. Okay, so the question that I have, and I think I'll revise it in light of some of the things that have been said already. Can you hear me okay? I hear a little bit of, okay, I heard a bit of backlash. So I've been connected for some time now with a legal nonprofit called the Foundation for for Individual Rights and Education, FIRE. And I can reach out with ease to like the lower levels of this community, but I would feel less sure of myself in kind of working up the networking chain at that nonprofit. So I guess the first part of that question is, do you have any tips about working your way up for networking within an organization that you're already kind of affiliated with? But I think that the reason that I would want to do that is quite honestly to obtain connections to public servants in the field of law that are more like doing more work like law clerks or attorneys general and some of those more like high level public service jobs in law. And so if you have any tips on like reaching out to those types of positions as well, because that's like, I think the reason that I would be motivated to try and work my way up the chain of a legal nonprofit.
Nice. So are you still in school now or are you graduated?
Yeah, I'm still an undergraduate.
Okay. So this is a wonderful hack. It's on another slide, but let's pull it up. Ask the people you're already connected with if there's a way to get their boss to come and speak at a campus event. And it can be a virtual event so they don't have to leave their office. So that's a cool ask. People like to have the visibility of being a speaker and explaining their world. It's a way to put your current connection to use because they will have power within the organization if they can deliver the speaking opportunity to the right person. And then because you're the person who sponsors them, you're both getting access to them and being seen as a useful person and a leader on your campus. I've seen people do that in a couple industries where that slot of organizing the speakers group, you need to have an association, but I've seen the most cunning people will just spin up associations in 24 hours. It's now the student's interested in this particular group and they've got a speaking event going. But if there's an established club that should invite her or him to speak to, that's another way of doing it. But you're certainly within your rights to ask your current contacts for introductions to the higher people in the organization. And that kind of speaking situation is a nice way to make it a win for them.
Perfect. Thank you for your tips.
Cool.
All right. So next, we have Sydney.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, George, for all of your advice. It's been super helpful so far. My question has already really been covered. It was more about, I'm comfortable cold emailing professors and other professionals with like that initial point of contact, but maintaining those relationships kind of over a longer period always feels a little stilted and never quite organic. But if you have any other advice about like soft touch approaches to, facilitating those connections, I'm all ears, but you already covered it quite a bit. So.
Yeah, no, it's worth revisiting because it's a great area where you've established the kind of contact that a star student is entitled to, and then how do you transition it to something that's more useful for your career? How much can you probe with them? Who else do you know in the field? Who would be good for me to talk to? Because that can be really valuable. I mean, a lot of professors are really good connectors, and taking advantage or making the most of that opportunity can be really valuable, especially as you start to get more specific about what you're looking for.
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, this summer got a position as an intern in government by talking to a professor and seeing that Biden had appointed another professor from my university to a task force, and then he knew that professor, so that connection was facilitated by me just asking, like, do you know her? Could you CC me on an email? But yeah, I'm always hesitant and a little bit insecure to make that ask because I'm worried.
So did you do a thanks for that introduction? That was really wonderful, and here's why.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay, and use your specifics sometimes to create the next interaction of, that's a great internship. One of my favorite experiences was doing this. I'm wondering if you know more about this issue, or whether you think this is a growing field, or kind of draw their expertise in on the next stage in your career. And also, once you create the sense that your career is moving forward and that talking to you will get to be more and more of a peer relationship as you rise in the world, even if you're feeling you're not quite there yet. But that sense of students who are progressing is really exciting for faculty, as opposed to you're at the same place as you were a year ago. And one of the real joys for instructors is the sense of students who come back after 10 or 20 years and they are somewhat important. Priest who married us was Sonia Sotomayer's middle school teacher way back in the Bronx in the 1960s. And that, if you ask Raymond Rafferty, what are the most amazing moments you've ever had in, as a priest? Having a future Supreme Court justice in his life as a middle schooler is going to be up the top. And you don't need to be Sonia Sotomayor, but that kind of driver of, wanting to stay in touch with your students and just seeing how they're going, you've got value for them. So don't underestimate just the two-way nature of a check-in of here's what I'm doing now, here's how I'm moving forward. Let's spend a moment more on this slide, and then we'll do some more on what else do I have here. So we talked about discernment versus adoration. You've got skills to offer them. And sometimes faculty will have, a report that they need to finish, or some footnotes that need to be done, or a scrap of research. And you can also just let them know, if you need any help on something, I'd be happy to do this. And small projects often lead to big projects. Or you've got introductions that might be useful to them if they're doing something that's aimed more at what is the mood of the student population, or what are top of mind issues for undergrads. If there's a course you took from them and you either loved every bit of it, or think there are ways they could teach it better, you can just ask them, hey, are you still teaching course 107 and how's the student mix this year? And you're kind of an interesting person for them to confide of, wow, this is, you know, my most scattered student group yet. If they've tried to teach it on Zoom, being a sympathetic person, if I love the way you taught this in person, are you able to keep it going on Zoom and how's that been? You know, that can get you to an interesting conversation too. And then obviously you come recommended. This is, you know, if faculty can point you toward other people, and we just had that beautiful example of here's another professor who's doing something good. Go deeper with the people who are helping you and see if they've got more people who can help you. Let's pop back to what types of people you're trying to meet. I just want to get a couple of these ideas out because they may spark more conversations. So 3 types of people you're trying to meet. The first are the connectors, the role that Mike and I played. And also big picture specialists. They can tell you how jobs are lined up in an entire field. I come across this more in banking, but it's probably true in public service too. They're very high profile positions that everyone knows about. The immigration attorney, but then there are all sorts of other people who work in that field where you may not know about the job. And these kinds of experts can be great about telling you, here are all the different things you can do in this field, including some jobs that don't get that many applications because most people don't even realize they're there. And then the next, which we did a little bit on, is drilling down on specific organizations. If there's a place you want to work, try and, you know, get in touch with 3, 4, 5, 6 people there. Don't be a total pest, but don't worry about trying to strike up conversations with multiple people there. They'll know about different opportunities. And the third, which we already covered, was just ask, who else should I talk to? And that's a good thing to introduce into almost any conversation. So we've covered those 2 slides. Nora, if there's some more things in the chat, and then I will do a slide about how you can take the conversation forward.
Okay. I think most of the rest of the chat right now is comments. If anyone did want to share their comment, we can, but I'm not seeing any specific questions.
Okay, so we can jump into where we want the conversation to go. And some of this we've already addressed, but these may be extra tips on that question of I've established the contact, how do I build on it? So the classic starter is just explain the field to me. I'd love 15 or 20 minutes of what are the opportunities, what skills should I have, where can I get hired? HI is an acronym that we use at LinkedIn, how I got here. And some people love to retell their whole journey from wherever they started to what they're doing now. Some people get a little tired of it. But if there's a particular aspect of it, you may want to zero in, hey, I'd love to know how you went from one kind of law to another kind of law, or what it's like to switch firms, or, you know, big city versus small city. People can be good on that. How you can join their organization, obviously that's a natural. Shadowing someone on the job. This works well in ad agencies, design firms. I've seen judges will let people come into their courtroom for a morning just to watch sentencings and arraignments, which is quite fascinating. But think about if there are fields that you're interested in, immigration law. Is there an immigration attorney who would let you spend a morning just seeing how they work their caseload? You'll be attentive, you'll be interested. It's kind of exciting for them to find someone who finds their job interesting. And if they've been doing it for a lot of years, it can seem routine. And you will have a sense of engagement and intrigue on things that deep down they know are interesting, but they've just lost a little bit of that spark, and you'll help them rebuild it. So that's good. Can you critique my work? Again, you have to figure out if that's relevant for the area you're going into, but if you're starting to write essays or build things for your portfolio, getting the thought of an expert or a contact can be quite valuable. I'm hoping to get this published somewhere. Could you give it a look and offer me any thoughts? I can't guarantee they will, but if the relationship is starting to get to the point where you go, we're having good conversations, that is the next step to think about. And then I officially put down the idea of giving them speaking invitations. Good. Nora, if there are even things in the comments that people just said, this is how it speaks to me, I'm happy to have those surface. That's always good.
Yeah, sure. Kyla, do you want to share your comment?
Yes. Hi, George. Thank you again for spending part of your afternoon with us. I really appreciate it. What I shared in the chat was that usually when it comes to connecting with people on LinkedIn, I'm often hesitant about doing so, especially with strangers or people that I've never really talked to but hope to talk to. And I just want to thank you for sharing some of the affirmations because they've helped me realize that doing that is a normal part of networking. So I'm more confident now, connecting with strangers that I hope to reach out to and even knowing how to do so. So thank you.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. That's terrific. Tell me a little more about what you're studying and where you'd like to go.
Yes, so I attend Millsaps College in Jackson, Mississippi, and I major in sociology. And my focus is social scientific research. So I hope to do that as a career. And lately, well, this summer I've been conducting research, and part of what I've been doing is reaching out to people to sort of see if they can help me in any way with my research, or at least reaching out to potential participants. So it's been pretty hard, connecting with people, especially in a world where, things are still kind of virtual. So I've just been trying to build my network, specifically through LinkedIn, and it's been working, but I still have some, hesitations as far as reaching out to strangers. So I've just been doing that all summer. It's been working out well, but usually I hear people say like, oh, this person just viewed my LinkedIn profile, like I don't even know them. And it's like, oh my, what if I do the exact same thing? So it's just some things that make me hyper aware of as far as like, am I crossing this invisible boundary if I'm just connecting with this random person that doesn't know me, but I know of them. So that's just some reasons why I've been sort of hesitant to reach out to strangers.
Yeah, no, I think we've all been there. I mean, that is part of life. I'll offer you a hack that I did a lot in my early 20s. Sometimes I go, you know what, I just want to hide under the covers, and I will let my spirit hide under the covers, but my new best friend, sort of double George, is going to go be George's real advocate. And, true George can stay under the covers, but I'm just going to assume the personality of someone who wants to take care of me. And I'm going to go advocate and almost kind of dissociate that fragile part of your ego. I'm sure psychologists will say that's the first step toward madness, but it worked pretty well, because there are times where you just kind of need to switch into this advocate role as opposed to a vulnerable role, and thinking about how you can pitch your stuff to people. I mean, that tone that you get in when you're writing your resume, okay, this doesn't have to be all my insecurities, this is my selling document.
Right.
I want to do a shout out for Millsaps. I visited, was there in 2016. Is William Story still teaching history?
He is.
I see double nods, that's right.
I've taken a class in my freshman year.
Wow. So he was my host when I came there. We got into a conversation about the value of a liberal arts degree, and I can't remember if I quoted him in the book or not. I might not have, but I love talking to him. Hopefully he's a good guy. Okay, sort of like 2/3 of a nod, sometimes good.
Yes, he's great. He's good.
Oh, good.
We have another Millsap student in the conversation, not to put you on the spot, knows him, but she also knows him and she's smiling right now. So I think he's pretty good.
Oh, absolutely. Bill Story is one of Millsap's finest professors.
Say hi to him for me. Let him know. It's great to see the school is represented and well represented today. This is excellent. Yeah, and coming back to sort of building out from team sociology, take me through in a little bit more detail what kind of people you'd most like to get to know who could be most helpful for you.
Yes, so I would like to connect with a lot of people that work within nonprofits in New Orleans. So I've been connecting with those kinds of people on LinkedIn, but also New Orleans residents. And I remember one slide you had was connecting with people from your hometown. And it's like, yeah, we do have this sort of kinship since we're from the same place, but we are strangers. So also your slide helped me sort of, confirm that it's okay to reach out to those people. But those are the audiences that I hope to reach, people from New Orleans and other people that have experience in the nonprofit world?
So I can be a little bit of help for you on this. Back when I was at the Wall Street Journal, I did this great big feature on how their top public school reopened after Katrina. They were completely flooded out. They were supposed to be closed for a year. They did all kinds of amazing things to get open in 4 months. I got to know a bunch of the people on the leadership of the school. There was a parents group and some others. Ping me a note on LinkedIn. I will do some introductions to people I remember from that project being helpful. I don't know if they're directly running nonprofits, but I think a couple of them are. But a couple of them are also those kind of connectors within the city who just know a lot of people in government, out of government. And if I tell them you're a great person and they should make time for you, I'm pretty confident they will. And then it's a matter of just getting their contacts and running from there. So, it's going to be that, 4 different faces kind of thing that I showed you on the chart at the beginning, but I'm happy to get it rolling.
Okay, thank you, George. I'll be sure to send you a note.
New Orleans is home for you, or?
It is.
Okay. The city itself or outside, or?
Algiers. I don't know if you know about.
I was going to say Algiers. Okay, I'm psychic. Yeah, I should have spoken 2 seconds earlier. Then this would have been a really cool magic trick.
Yeah, I'm from Algiers. But the towns in New Orleans that I'm researching this summer are Mid-City, Bywater, and Treme, if you've heard of those. So that's where I'm going to be.
Those I don't know well, but I'm excited to hear that you're doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right, wonderful. So we are getting to the end of time, but I think we have one more question, if that works for you, George.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. So Isabel, do you want to go? No. Isabel?
Oh, sorry, my audio was spotty, so I didn't hear you say my name. Well, I had like 2 things, but I think the one question which everyone can benefit from is when you connect with a stranger on LinkedIn, is there like a time frame of when you should reach out to them first? Because personally, I can identify that I want to talk to them and I can see that they're a connector, but then I get stressed out thinking of what to say or asking for an informal interview. And then I think that if too much time goes by, then they may not even remember why we connected, or they may not respond to my message.
I would say, assuming they can accept your connection request, if you can be back in the first day or 2, that's nice. It's not essential. You could still pick it up a week or 2 later. I mean, I've actually got a couple people I went to high school with that I reconnected with that still can't figure out what my ask is and how I can bring something up without seeming like a stalker person. But generally 1 to 2 days. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Just sort of, hey, I saw you're interested in this. This is my situation. I'd love to learn more, or I'd welcome a chance to discuss this with you. And if they clicked yes on your connection request, they're warmly disposed to you. You don't have to write the world's greatest note. And sometimes just explaining what you're up to. I wanted to pop up the next slide about networking versus job ads, just because the statistics are so big on that you don't have to be the world's best networker. Even if you're a little hit and miss, you're in a better place than just trying to get things to happen via finding job ads. And at LinkedIn, we have some positions we get 900 applicants for, and that's kind of terrifying. And you can be in the top 1% of the candidate pool, and you're still only one of 9 people who are there. So anytime you can open doors, even if you don't open all of them, by trying to strike up conversations with people, balance your expectations. If you can get 1/3 of your connections to engage with you, that's a good outcome. You'll actually probably do better than that, but don't be devastated if you thought someone was going to be good. There are more people out there. And if it's 2%, then you're probably either making the wrong ask or going after the wrong people. But as long as it's double digit, 10, 15, 20, 25%, you're getting value. And I have cousins who are Mormon missionaries, and their deal is to go to about 40 houses a week. And if they can get 1 or 2 converts, that's a good week. We don't have to be that fussy, but So much of school, you're expected to get 90% to get an A, and if you got 80%, that's barely a B, and anything below 80, you didn't come through. I would say one of the things I'll offer you on adult life is so much of adult life is just trying to be in the 60s and 70s. And if you can end up there, a lot of good things can happen to you. There's more tolerance for misfiring than there is in an academic setting. So don't feel like they all have to work. As long as a few of them do, you're good.
Great. Thanks so much. All right, so I think we have one last question, which seems like a good next steps way to end it. So I'll just, Sam asked, what is the process for connecting with you on LinkedIn? Should we send you an email, et cetera? Obviously, Ann and I can help out on our side of this in any way possible. So George, what's the next step for them to connect with you?
Yeah, so you can just send a simple connection request. And if you want to send a longer email with some detail, that's great. But just explain a little bit about what you're interested in and ways that I can be helpful. I will try and offer personal advice and suggestions anywhere I can. And you've seen my style already. I'll give you a lot of ideas. You need to pick and choose what's really going to work for you versus what was interesting but not quite right for your situation. But there are situations where I genuinely know people who could be useful to you, and I'm happy to share contacts. So just send in connection requests, and I will try and click yes within a day or two, because I kind of set that as the standard.
Great. And I believe last year we sent you a list with the names of the
yeah, I've got the webpage now. It's got everyone's pictures and their schools and all that, so that's good too. But yeah, thanks for taking time to do it. Congratulations again on being selected for the program. It's a high honor, and this is one of my favorite moments of the spring, is just getting a sense of the energy in all the places that people want to go. Anything I can do to support that is time well spent.
Thank you so much, George. As I said before, I think all of you can now see why we considered George such a great friend to the society, and the amount of time and investment and strategies and hope, I think, that you instill with the group is just really remarkable. You're very generous with your time, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. No, it's a two-way street, and congratulations to everyone. And I look forward to hearing from you guys in the years ahead. And, I save these lists because then I can go, oh, I knew them when they were just on the Zoom panel. So,
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.